Hello everyone and welcome to my final video that I plan on posting tonight. This is one that I've been toying around with making for a while now, even like a couple years. I've been thinking about what's the right way to approach this conversation and how I feel about it personally, and that is a discussion about wrestling psychology and what it means. Something that I've noticed more and more is that more and more reviews, whether it be written or in video form, whenever they talk about matches, there's always this tendency to kind of drop the term wrestling psychology. And like I said, on the internet scene, I see it more and more, and I almost feel like, I hate to sound like an asshole when I say this, but I almost feel like a bunch of these fans saw a Raven shoot interview where he talks about psychology, and they thought it sounded cool, so they started using the terminology themselves to make themselves sound smart, but they don't really have a full understanding of what it means. What is wrestling psychology, and can we as fans even really fully understand what wrestling psychology is? Whenever I read a review of a match, and it'll say something to the effect of, this match had great psychology because the heel worked over a body part and the face sold it. And I just look at that as like, really? That's all it takes? That's wrestling psychology? That's it? It's that easy? It's that simple? You work over a body part and you sell it? That's it? That's all it takes? I don't know. I don't feel like that's what wrestling psychology is. And again, I can only speak for myself personally, but I also don't feel like wrestling psychology is necessarily all about slow build-ups. I think a lot of matches work better with slow build-ups, but at other times when you have an intense rivalry, it's better to start off hot and really sell the fact that these two guys really fucking hate each other. There's no, at least in my mind, there's no set way to do things. You got to do whatever services the story and whatever services the characters. But going back to my original point, wrestling psychology, to me, if I had to define it, and, for whatever my opinion is worth, I would say wrestling psychology is that part of the art form where the performers are able to fully convince the audience that what they're seeing is an actual competition between two guys trying to win said competition. And that there are many different ways to do that. There are many different ways to achieve that goal. I can't tell you how many, again, going back to my example about working over a body part and selling it, to me that it's a potential tool to achieving perfect wrestling psychology and getting me invested. Like Bayley and Sasha Banks, Bayley's hand injury was used very effectively in that match and sold the story even better and sucked me in even more. I will never forget that spot with Sasha Banks stomping on Bayley's hand while she locked on the bank statement. It was so nasty and sick and just made me even more invested in what was going on. However, if I'm watching a show and this match does a spot where the heel is working over a body part and the face is selling it, it might click in my brain that's like, there were two other matches on the show that already did that. Or, the story doesn't really call for selling a body part. Or, oh, yeah, they did that, but then the finish had nothing to do with the injury, so who cares? So is it really good psychology if you just do those things? I don't think so. I think there are several things that could take me out of it, regardless of what you're trying to do. And perfect example, I brought it up when Finn Balor was in that Dusty Rhodes Tag Team Classic tournament, and the finals was worked around Balor his leg injury, and the match ends with him hitting the coup de grace, or however you want to pronounce it, which is the double foot stomp. And it's like, well, then what was the point of the leg injury if he was just going to win the match with his standard finisher anyway? It didn't play into the finish, it didn't impact the drama, it didn't do anything, so why even do it? And that was my criticism of that whole thing. Not like a major criticism, but a criticism nonetheless. And to me, it kind of took me out of the match a little bit. And again, I think back throughout my entire time as a wrestling fan, my favorite matches are the ones where I just get fully sucked into what I'm seeing and I just buy it. Even if it looks ridiculous on paper, Ultimate Warrior and Randy Savage at WrestleMania 7 is... when I did my top 30 WrestleMania match series, I put it as my number one favorite WrestleMania match of all time. Part of that is because the entire time I fully believed that both guys were fighting for their careers. It was just everything that they did, everything from bell to bell just made me go, oh my god, these two, like, they know, like, how serious this is. And they know that, you know, somebody's career is going to end tonight, and they're fighting tooth and nail to save their own career. And even when you get to that moment where Warrior doubts himself and he starts looking at his hands and talking to his gods, and, you know, nobody ever praises Warrior on his in-ring psychology, but a moment like that, I look at that as like, you know, if Hogan does it, it's stupid. If Austin does it, it's stupid. If Cena does it, it's stupid. But with Warrior, it made sense. And that's one of those big character moments that makes me remember the character, invest in the character, and made that particular match more believable, even though what they did was really out there and really crazy. Lucha Underground does out there and crazy shit all the time, but their matches are also between characters that I legit feel like are trying to actually fight each other and actually trying to hurt each other because they hate each other. That Jeremiah Crane Mil Muertes match from a few weeks ago, I'm like, oh my god, these two are killing each other. I believe that they hated each other, and that's half the battle right there. Hogan and Andre, you know, people say that match is limited, but I believe that match every step of the way, and it's one of the matches that I watch that gives me goosebumps whenever I watch it. To me, psychology is about getting the audience on board with what you're doing and being able to convince them that what they're seeing is legitimate, even if they know it's not. And it's the same with any other art form like movies or television or, you know, books and comics and whatever you can think of. You know, if I'm watching Game of Thrones and something crazy happens, it doesn't matter. It's like, look, I know ice zombies don't exist. I know dragons don't exist. But in this moment, as I'm watching it, it might as well be real. And they've got me sucked in, and I'm totally invested in what I'm seeing. Like, look, wrestling, I know. Nobody does an Irish whip in the middle of a fight. I know all these things. But if you have the right story, you have the right characters, and the right performers playing those characters to act out the story appropriately, then I'm like, I buy it. And that to me is what psychology is all about. And to use WrestleMania 7 as an example again, the Jake Roberts Rick Martel blindfold match. You know damn good and well that they could see through those hoods, but while the match was in place, and after the bell rang, I bought it. And all Jake had to do was point. That's incredible to me. That is really good work to me. And that's the type of stuff I remember. And that's the type of stuff that, you know, you can do all the shooting star presses you want. You can do all the flip-flops and the dives and all of that. But if you don't have that story, if you don't have those characters, it's not going to be worth a hell of beans. And there's a reason why guys like AJ Styles stand out over the other guys of his type. I mean, AJ really is something special. And that's because he's really learned how to... and I guess this comes from working with Jerry Lynn so early on in his run in TNA, but... he's really learned how to put matches together and how to make those stories work and how to make spots work and how to do all those things. His match with Samoa Joe at Turning Point 2005. I totally believe that they were beating the crap out of each other. They weren't, but it was one of those like, oh my god, this is like a perfect like New Age style David versus Goliath type of match. It was great. I would go as far to say best match that either guy had in TNA. It was that well done and that well executed. And really, that should be the goal of the wrestler. It's like, whenever they go out there, it's like, look, we want to make sure that the fans, especially if it's a match with big build-up and big promotion behind it, we want to make sure that the fans believe in what we're seeing. Because if they don't believe it, then nothing's going to work, and it doesn't matter what we do. And, yeah, that to me is what wrestling psychology is all about. It's not a simple formula that anyone can act out. And like I said, there are different ways to achieve it. There are different ways to convince me and to enthrall me by what you're doing and to get me on board with what I'm seeing. whether it be through small character moments or a well-timed big high spot or something, whatever. There are different ways to achieve that, or at least my definition of what wrestling psychology is all about. Yeah, it's just one of those things. I just wanted to talk about it because it's one of those things I see more and more, where everybody just kind of throws around the term wrestling psychology, and it almost feels like they don't know exactly what it means. And all the examples that I've used so far, I could even use Okada and Omega this year. Both their matches, completely different stories, and both of them great examples of in-ring psychology. In the first match they had at Wrestle Kingdom, I was like, okay, if Omega hits the One-Winged Angel, it's over. And that was just the way that they were working the match, with Okada countering every single attempt at the One-Winged Angel. I just thought, oh my god, it's over the first time Omega hits it. And it just came down to, like, how many counters does Okada have for this move? Because he better have all of them, because once it gets hit, it's over, and Omega was never able to hit it on him. Told that story beautifully. And then you get to their second match, which was the hour-long draw, and it's so funny because most 1 hour matches I've seen, they start slow and then get hot in the last 20 minutes. This one did kind of the opposite. It was hot and high impact in the early portions of the match, and then they slowed down. And that was such a great thing to do for me, because by the end of the match, I totally believe that the 1 hour, it just basically killed them. I like Omega, and I'll say this, when it comes time to do the end of the year awards, don't be surprised if I end up giving Spot of the Year to Kenny Omega collapsing during the Rainmaker attempt at the tail end of that match, because that was just such a... And again, it's not a big high spot, it's not a big high-flying move or anything like that, it's not Shane McMahon diving off a cage, but it was a perfect storytelling moment where I completely bought into what I was seeing, and at the end of the day, that's what matters more than anything. When I saw Omega collapse on the Rainmaker attempt, I was like, oh my god, the hour is taking its toll. He's tired, and I love that type of stuff, and I love those little nuances, and anything you can do to really suck me into what I'm seeing. I'll applaud you for it, because it's always, I see moments like that and I'm like, that is just beautiful. That is so, I mean, while I'm watching it, I'm like, oh my god, what's going on? But when I look back on it, and I was like, when it comes time to do a video review of the match, I'm like, yeah, that was great. That was really great that they took us on that journey, and they were able to suck me in like that. And so yeah, that to me basically sums up my feelings on wrestling psychology. It's about the wrestlers making me forget that what I'm seeing isn't real. And they can even use unrealistic ways to do that, which, if you can, I mean, that's even more incredible. Like, Undertaker, half the stuff he gets away with. Anyone else does it, it's dumb as hell, but Undertaker, he gets away with it. It's like, sure, he can magically teleport out of a coffin that's been set on fire. Totally, because he's the Undertaker. And you just buy it. And, they did a lot of weird things like that with Taker. So, it's, so when I think about wrestling psychology, it's typically not in the moves, and it's not in any kind of match formula that you try to do. It's all about those little nuances and those nice little fine touches that really separate the greats from the very goods, or even the goods from the not so goods, or from the goods from the painfully average. It's those little touches that really make matches better, make stories better, and make the art form better. And like I said, there are guys that do all the high-flying moves in the world that I think are boring. And because they're not able to put those moves together in a way that's interesting. I'm not saying everybody needs to be an over-the-top personality like a Randy Savage or a Shawn Michaels or a Rock or Steve Austin or anybody like that, but you got to have something to connect with. And if you're able to have those little character moments that make you interested, like Dean Malenko, people said that Dean Malenko is the most boring guy on the planet, and it's like, dude, I popped like a motherfucker when he took the Cyclope mask off during that Battle Royal. I was totally invested in what I was seeing. I was like, I had this like cathartic moment where I was like, yes, he's finally gonna get his hands on Jericho, and I was a total mark. I was a total like, Here we go. He's finally going to get the heel. Hooray! Great stuff. That's the type of stuff I like to see in wrestling, and that's the type of stuff that really makes me keep coming back and has made me a lifelong fan of the art form. I can't really credit it to big high-flying moves or technical prowess. It's more about the stories and those little nuances that really put the fine touches on matches and stories that really catch my attention and really make them better in my eyes. So, yeah, that's basically what I wanted to go. Kind of on a bit of a philosophical soapbox here going over this. But, yeah, post in the comments below and let me know what you think. But if I had to define wrestling psychology, for whatever that's worth, that is how I would approach it, and that's how I would define it. So, that's just me. If I had to think of, like, bad psychology, I already mentioned, like, injuries that don't mean anything. Even if they're sold during the match, if they don't mean anything, that to me is like, well, what was the point of even doing it, But, I mean, a lot of the matches you see today that are like I call them the formula matches. Cena gets blamed for it a lot with his 5 moves of doom, and yes. But like, the real, like, kings of it, like, if I had to think about it, like, Dudley Boys, you watch them on Raw, if you've seen any of their Raw matches, I could set a stopwatch to their matches. Like, it was like, I could call their matches spot for spot. Rob Van Dam, it's like, all right, you're seeing the Rolling Thunder, you're seeing the, like, the spinning kick off the apron, you're gonna see split-legged moonsault, you're basically gonna see all of Rob's, key spots in every single match that he does. And I could almost call all of his spots before they would happen. New Age Outlaws, you've seen one match, you've seen them all. Like, almost. Not entirely, but... especially on their last run, I would just sit there and be like, it's the exact same fucking thing. It's literally like the same thing every week. There's not a whole lot of varying it up. And when I see matches like that, it's like, okay, they're acting out a script. And you lose me. And it's like, I don't buy it. It's just like they're just acting out a script. And that's all they're doing. And they've got their set formula and they're just doing paint by numbers bullshit. And it's the same thing every week. So who cares? And... that type of stuff to me personally, and these are guys that are vets, like, BG James, where did I pull that name from? Road Dogg, he came from the Armstrong family, great wrestling family. Dudley Boys, Rob Van Dam, those guys are veterans. And they're having matches where I'm just like, I don't believe in what I'm seeing. And, I don't know how much they have to do with that or how much the agents have to do with that. But, I mean, those type of matches just don't do anything for me. And it's almost like they're designed to kind of give people, it's like, all right, people like these spots, so give them those spots. But the matches don't make any sense because they're identical to the matches I saw, last week and the week before that and the week before that. Yeah, so that's my wrestling soapbox thing. Like I said, post in the comments below and let me know what you think regarding wrestling psychology and how you would define it. But for right now, that is all I've got for you. So, like I said before, enjoy your Labor Day weekend. I will be back next week for more videos. I will have the top 10 matches for August 2017 posted next week. That should be included in the next video, so be on the lookout for that. But until then, peace out, everybody.